never believed in ghosts. Not really. Not in the way that made me check under the bed at night or avoid walking past cemeteries after dark. But I believe now, because something is in my house and it doesn't want me to leave. It started 2 weeks ago. I had just moved into a small rental house in a quiet neighborhood, a fresh start, the kind of place where nothing ever happened. The house was old, but it had character. Tall windows, creaky wooden floors, a basement I swore I would never go into, but it was cheap and I needed somewhere to land after everything that had happened. The first night was normal. I unpacked, ordered takeout, fell asleep watching TV. The second night I woke up to footsteps, soft, slow, pacing the length of the hallway outside my bedroom. I told myself it was my imagination, that old houses settle at night, but deep down I knew the difference. And then came the scratching. At first it was faint, almost like mice in the walls, then louder, deliberate. Scrape, 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 always at exactly 3:12 a.m. The sound of nails dragging across wood, too rhythmic, too steady, as if something was waiting for me to acknowledge it. By the fourth night I couldn't take it anymore. I threw open my bedroom door, but the hallway was empty. The scratching had stopped. The air felt wrong, thicker, heavier, charged with something unseen. And then I noticed it. The basement door. It was open, just an inch. I had locked it. I was sure I had locked it. I stepped forward, pulse hammering. My own breath felt too loud in the silence. The wooden stairs vanished into complete darkness. I should have closed the door, locked it, walked away, but I didn't. Instead I whispered, "Hello?" And something whispered back, "You're supposed to be here." My body locked up, the air went ice cold. The door slammed shut in my face. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I called the landlord. I told him about the noises, the basement door, the whispers. There was a long pause on the other end of the phone. And then he said, "Don't go down there," in Hummer. I packed a bag. I was ready to leave, but when I reached the front door, it wouldn't open. The locks weren't stuck. The key turned just fine, but the door refused to budge, as if something on the other side was holding it shut. I tried the windows, nailed shut. I grabbed my phone to call for help, no signal. I was trapped. That night, the whispering started again. Not from the hallway, from inside the walls. "You shouldn't have come here. It's not your house. It wants you to stay." The whispers moved, circling me, pressing closer. I pressed my hands over my ears, heart pounding. Then the lights flickered, the air shifted, and the basement door creaked open. I knew what it wanted. It wanted me down there. I grabbed the heaviest flashlight I could find and stepped toward the open door. The air grew colder with every step, my breath visible in the dim light. The basement stairs groaned under my weight as I descended. The deeper I went, the darker it got, swallowing the light. Then, at the bottom, I saw them. Handprints, dozens of them, pressed into the walls, into the floor, some small like children's hands, others too large, stretched too long, the fingers wrong. A door stood at the far end of the basement, a door that shouldn't be there, and from behind it, the scratching. Slow, deliberate, waiting. I reached for the doorknob. My fingers trembled. The second I touched the wood, something pounded from the other side. Loud, furious. The walls shook. The whispering grew louder, overlapping, frantic. Don't open it. It will see you. It will know you're here. I had to know. I turned the handle, and the door flew open. A black void stretched beyond it, endless, pulsing, and in the darkness, something moved, too tall, too thin, a shape with no face, just a mouth stretched wide, grinning, filled with teeth that never ended. I stumbled back, my flashlight flickering. The thing stepped forward. I slammed the door shut and ran. I took the stairs 2 at a time, heart in my throat, the whispers screaming now. The second I reached the top, the basement door slammed shut behind me. The house went silent. The air lifted, the cold fading, and then the front door unlocked. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the street, gasping, shaking, the house looming behind me. The basement door had been open for a reason. Something inside wanted out, and I had almost let it. The next day, I packed my things and left for good. But the worst part, last night in my new apartment, I woke up to scratching. I left that house. I left it far behind, told myself I would never look back, but something came with me. At first I thought it was paranoia, just leftover fear from what had happened in the basement, from that thing behind the door. But I know the difference between fear and presence. And something is here. It started small. The first night in my new apartment, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to the sound of scratching. Not outside, not in the walls, under my bed. I froze. My pulse pounded in my ears. I forced myself to stay still, to breathe as quietly as possible. I was sure I had imagined it, until I saw the shadow. A shape elongated, too thin, stretching from under the bed to the far wall, flickering in the dim light of the street lamp outside. It didn't move like a normal shadow. It twitched like something shifting beneath the surface. I didn't look. I didn't move. I knew that if I looked it would know I had seen it, and I couldn't let it know. The scratching stopped at sunrise. The shadow was gone. I told myself it was a nightmare. I almost believed it. Until the next night. I was brushing my teeth when I noticed something in the mirror. A smudge on the glass. I wiped it away. It came back. Then I saw it. The smudge wasn't a smudge. It was a handprint. Not mine. It was too small. Too many fingers. And it was on the inside of the glass. I ran. I left the lights on that night, every single one. But light doesn't stop shadows. And by the third night it was waiting for me. Not in the walls, not under the bed, in the reflection. I woke up to my phone buzzing, a notification, but when I checked, the screen was black. Just black. No text, no caller ID. Then the buzzing stopped, and my phone screen lit up. Camera mode. It was open, recording, and the feed wasn't showing my ceiling, it wasn't even showing me. It was showing the mirror across the room, and inside the mirror, something was standing there. Not me, not human. Its head tilted slowly, its mouth stretching too wide, its eyes black as the space behind the basement door. Then it whispered, through the speaker, through the mirror, through the space between my skin and my bones. You never closed the door. I dropped the phone. The mirror cracked. The room went black, and I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was back in the basement. The air was thick, cold, the walls pressed in, the floor was covered in handprints, smearing outward from the door I had shut weeks ago. And this time, it was open, wide open. A void stretched beyond it, twisting and pulsing, and something inside was waiting for me. Then, I heard the whisper again. Come closer. The walls shuddered, the air collapsed in on itself, and I felt into the darkness, into the space that was never supposed to be open, into the thing I should have never seen. And then I woke up, back in my bed, sweating, gasping, the phone still in my hand, the screen dark, the mirror completely shattered. The door to my bedroom, open. I never opened it, and now every time I close my eyes I hear it scratching, because the door was never supposed to be shut, and now something is waiting for me to open it again. I tried to escape, I tried to move on, I told myself it wasn't real, that the basement, the handprints, the whispers in the dark were just my mind breaking under stress. But something followed me, and now it doesn't need to hide anymore. I don't sleep much these days, not after what happened last time, but exhaustion wins eventually, and last night, for the first time in weeks, I dreamed. No, not a dream, a memory. I was back in that house, the one I left behind. I was standing in front of the basement door. The air smelled of dust and damp wood, but beneath that, something else, rot. I knew what was waiting on the other side. I had seen it before, but in the dream, I opened the door. And this time, I stepped inside. The basement wasn't just a basement anymore. The walls pulsed, moving as if they were alive. The floor stretched downward, deeper than it should be, as if the house sat on the edge of something much bigger, much older. And in the center of it all was the door, the one I had closed, the one I had never locked. Something moved behind it. A slow, deliberate sound. Not footsteps, not scratching. Something worse, something breathing. The door started to open. A hand slipped through first. Not a human hand. The fingers were too long, the nails blackened, curling, scraping against the wood. The skin, if it was skin, was thin, stretched tight over the bones, pulsing faintly like something living beneath the surface. I tried to move. I couldn't. The door opened wider. A face emerged. Not a face. A shape that pretended to be one. Hollow eyes, a mouth too wide, teeth that never ended. It smiled. I found you. I woke up screaming. But the worst part wasn't the dream. It was my room. The mirror across from my bed, shattered. The door to my apartment, wide open. And on the floor, leading from my bed to the hallway, wet footprints. Not mine. The air was heavy, thick with a presence I couldn't see, but I felt it. Watching. Waiting. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands, but the screen was already on, already recording. The video? It was watching me sleep. And then the blankets behind me shifted. The camera glitched, distorting, the image warping into static. And before the recording cut off, I heard something, not a whisper, a voice. My voice. Let me in. I didn't go back to sleep. I don't think I'll ever sleep again, because I know now I never escaped, and whatever I brought with me It's getting stronger.